Chapter 1542. Tiangang Dynasty. Tiangang Dynasty's name appeared in everyone's mind. That was because other than the Tiangang Dynasty's team, every other dynasty's team had returned. Previously, due to the sudden appearance of the demonic beasts, they could not pay attention to their surroundings at all. Now, it seemed that it was most likely done by the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators. Tiangang Dynasty. Chung Hufeng narrowed his eyes. He felt that this must be man-made, and the answer had already been revealed. If it were any other cultivator who did not obtain the Wind Spirit Tiger's cub, they would definitely return unwillingly. However, with the strength of the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators, it was impossible for them to be completely annihilated by the demonic beasts. Therefore, there was only one explanation. Everything was planned by the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators. For a moment, everyone's expression became extremely ugly. They did not expect that they would be set up by the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators. This was too depressing. Damn the Tiangang Dynasty. Feng Wenxiang was furious. Now that he thought about it, the reason why the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators could be so comfortable and relaxed was most likely because they had already planned everything. That was why they were able to be so relaxed. If I meet the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators again, I will definitely kill them. Feng Wenxiang's anger could not be quelled. He should have killed the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators earlier. Then, such a problem would not have occurred now. Oh my god, it was actually done by the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators. This is really unexpected. How'd they do it? This is too difficult. They were still in an alliance with us earlier. I didn't expect them to have already planned everything. At this moment, everyone reacted. Some were disgusted, and some were impressed. From the perspective of a bystander, they had to admit that the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators were indeed capable. It was impossible for ordinary cultivators to think of such a method, but the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators did it. Until now, after knowing everything, they still did not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest attracted the demonic beasts and only attacked them. The cultivators from the three dynasties looked at each other. They did not expect their flawless plan to be defeated by a small dynasty's team. Once this news got out, they would really lose face. In the next moment, Yu Junfei brought the group of cultivators and left. Let's go. Now that he knew the truth, there was no point in continuing to stay in the same place. It would only make him look foolish. Feng Wenxiang coldly glanced at Yu Junfei and immediately left with his team of cultivators. He knew that cooperating with a guy like Yu Junfei would not bring him any benefits. Now it was still a situation of losing everything. His team had even lost a cultivator. It was simply not worth it. The cultivator from a martial dynasty didn't stay either. He quickly left as well. They believed that even if Bailey Hongzhuang and the others obtained the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub now, it would be useless, because there were no sealing masters. As long as there was no sealing master, the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub would not be able to be sealed into a demonic beast egg. As a result, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could only carry the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub around. Chapter 1543. After the cultivators of the three dynasties left, the cultivators of the other dynasties were also aware of this. In fact, not only the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty, even if they obtained the cub of the Wind Spirit Tiger, they could only keep it by their side. Only after the end of the assessment could they contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger. Therefore, they still had a chance. As long as they found the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty, they could take the Wind Spirit Tiger as their own. After the cultivators of the three dynasties indifferently left for a distance, they flew away. They believed that the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty would not be far away. They must find the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty before the other cultivators. Otherwise, once they wander around, there would be no hope in the end. While the other cultivators were struggling to find, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had already arrived at the hidden cave. This was also an accidental discovery when they were chasing the monsters. It was extremely hidden, and it was impossible for ordinary cultivators to find this place. Originally, they did not pay much attention to this cave after discovering it. After all, it had no use for them. They did not expect that this cave would help them a lot. It was really unexpected. Everyone sat down in the cave and restrained their aura. The location of their cave was not very far. Once it was discovered by the cultivators of the other dynasties, it would be troublesome. I can guarantee that those cultivators must have gone back and found out that the problem is with us. Dongfang Yu's face was filled with a faint smile. After thinking carefully, he had already thought of the development of this matter. Listening to Dongfang Yu's words, everyone nodded. This was also what they thought. So, they must be looking for our figures. We have to try to restrain our aura and not be discovered by them. Gong Xiaoqing said. As long as those cultivators searched this area, they would not come back. The most dangerous place was the safest place. Many times, this was very true. I can already imagine Fang Wenqing's furious expression when he comes back and finds out that the cub of the wind spirit tiger was taken away by us. Haha. Xia Jiqing could not help but laugh out loud. Fang Wenqing's appearance before was really too annoying. With his temperament, he must have gone crazy by now. Smiles appeared on everyone's faces. Fang Wenqing had been so full of himself before, so his expression must be very interesting now. That kind of guy should be taught a lesson like this, quietly infuriating him to death. Yuan Xiaoman laughed. Looks like we have a lot more enemies this time. Mo Yunjue sat down where he was, his handsome face filled with a playful chuckle. Speaking of which, there weren't many teams that could cause as much trouble as they did. Everyone shrugged. In fact, they didn't want to cause so much trouble. However, these troubles would always inexplicably find them. Thus, they could only deal with it. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the three wind spirit tiger cubs who were still in a daze. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tenderness as she held them in her arms. These little fellows had just been born and had already experienced so many things, but they were still unaware of it. Chapter 1544. As Xia Jiqing's voice fell, everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, they had never seen a sealer before and did not understand how a sealer sealed a monster egg. However, from the small number of sealers, they knew that sealing was definitely not a simple matter. Although Hongzhuang told them that she knew how to seal, this was really suspicious. This sealing technique was obviously not something that ordinary cultivators could come into contact with. In some small dynasties, it was impossible for a sealer to exist. Hongzhuang's previous identity was the daughter of the general's house of Fengbo country. It was reasonable to say that it was impossible for her to come into contact with all this. However, when they thought about how many incredible things had happened to Hongzhuang, they felt that this matter was not impossible. Therefore, now everyone just stared at Bailey Hongzhuang, waiting for the former to give them an answer. Mo Yunjue also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. He had seen a sealer before. Every sealer was a high existence and had certain eccentricities. In short, they were not very good people to deal with. Moreover, the sealers he had seen were very old. It was said that the young sealers had a high chance of failure. Once the seal failed, the monster's life would also be lost. Therefore, the young sealers could only try to seal some monster beasts that were only for ornamental purposes. Even so, the possibility of failure was still very high. The higher the level of the monster, the more difficult it was to seal and the higher the failure rate. With Hongzhuang's age, it should be very difficult to seal the wind spirit tiger. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the three wind spirit tigers in front of her, then smiled and said, "Let's wait for the various dynasties to search before we seal them." The sealing technique had always been a method that required patience. It usually required an absolutely quiet environment to be carried out meticulously. This was because every time there was a slight deviation, it could lead to the failure of the seal. This requirement was even higher than inscriptions, which was the reason why sealers were rare. The failure of the inscription was just a waste of some materials, but once the seal failed, it was the life of a newborn monster beast. Back then, when she was the head of the Bailey family, the young people of the family were in great need of contract beasts. However, there were no sealing masters in the family. Every time Patriarch Bailey returned from hunting young demonic beasts, he would need to pay a large sum of money to invite a sealing master. Sometimes, he might not even be able to invite a sealing master back. Under such circumstances, in a fit of anger, she learned the sealing technique herself. Fortunately, her mental strength was already very strong, and when she was learning alchemy, her mental strength had become even sharper. This allowed her to learn the sealing technique a little faster. Even though she was talented, she still spent a lot of time on her studies. Since then, she had been in charge of sealing the clan's contracted beasts. Through this practice, her sealing technique became better and better, saving the clan a lot of money. However, after her inexplicable death, the clan had to hire a new sealing master again. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone nodded and turned their attention to the outside. They only hoped that those cultivators would leave quickly and that this cave was hidden enough to not be discovered by other cultivators. Chapter 1545. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others noticed the commotion outside. Damn those Tiangang dynasty cultivators. If I find them, I will make them regret what they did today. Fang Wensheng said angrily. Captain, we don't know which direction the Tiangang dynasty cultivators went. What if we are found by the Cloud Sword dynasty or the Martial dynasty? A cultivator asked worriedly. Fang Wensheng looked angrily at the man who spoke. You're asking me? Who am I supposed to ask? That's why I asked you to hurry up and find them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others heard the commotion outside and could not help but smile. Sure enough, as they expected, Fang Wensheng was flustered and exasperated. Just as Yuan Xiaoman was about to speak, Bailey Hongzhuang made a shoot gesture and stopped her from speaking. Just like how they could sense the situation of Fang Wensheng and the others. If they spoke, even if their voices were very soft, Fang Wensheng and the others could still hear them. Therefore, they could only conceal all their auras to ensure that they would not be seen. Yuan Xiaoman immediately covered her mouth. She almost forgot that the situation in front of her did not allow for any mistakes. Ugh! Suddenly a sound was heard. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were stunned for a moment before realizing that it was the sound of the wind spirit tiger cub. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang, Mo Yinjue, and Bailey Hongzhuang quickly covered the wind spirit tiger cub's mouth. If they were discovered by the Azure Forest dynasty cultivators now, there would be more and more cultivators behind them. By then, it would be really troublesome. Fang Wensheng was about to leave after scanning the surroundings when he suddenly heard a soft sound. He could not help but stop and look in front of him in confusion. He did not know what that sound was. Fang Wensheng slowly approached Bailey Hongzhuang's position, while Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were already holding the weapons in their hands. Once Fang Wensheng came to the cave, they would immediately attack. No matter what, they could not give up on the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub. However, just as Fang Wensheng was getting closer to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, another aura came from behind. Fang Wensheng's face turned cold when he saw Yu Junfei. Although they had a short cooperation before, the conflict between the two teams could not be resolved. Yu Junfei glanced at the situation of Fang Wensheng and the others and said to the cultivators in the team, "There is no one here. Everyone, continue forward." Seeing this, Fang Wensheng's expression became even uglier. Yu Junfei was completely treating him as an errand boy. Thinking of this, Fang Wensheng immediately called the other cultivators in the team. He would not let the Tiangang dynasty's cultivators find the cultivators from Tiangang dynasty's dynasty. After sensing that the Azure Forest dynasty and Cloud Sword dynasty's cultivators had left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they were not discovered. Bailey Hongzhuang released the hand that was covering the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub's mouth. The Wind Spirit Tiger Cub was looking at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock as it panted heavily. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other and smiled. After the teams from the two dynasties left, the rest was much easier. Chapter 1546. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others stayed in the cave for a day and night. After Baishur released his aura, the monster beast did not dare to approach the cave. Originally, everyone relaxed after waiting for all the cultivators to leave, but Mo Yunjue still reminded everyone that the others might come back again. At first, everyone didn't believe it, but in the end, the facts clearly told them that it was all true. In the latter half of the night, the cultivators of the Martial dynasty came back again and searched the area again. In the end, they did not find their presence and left. It was not until later that there were no more movements from the cultivators of the other teams that everyone was completely relieved. This Martial Dynasty's cultivator is truly extraordinary. That Chung Hufeng is really meticulous in his work. If it wasn't for Mo Yunjue reminding us, I'm afraid we would have been discovered. Yuan Jixin's face could not hide the sigh. Who would have thought that there would be cultivators coming back to check again in the latter half of the night? Bailey Hongzhuang also felt a little emotional. Just as she expected, among the teams of the three dynasties, the cultivators of the Martial Dynasty were the most cunning and intelligent. The fact was indeed so. This Chung Hifeng's conduct made people feel a little apprehensive. In comparison, the cultivators of the Azure Forest Dynasty and the Cloud Sword Dynasty were much easier to deal with. Fortunately, we found this cave, otherwise we would have had to run all the way. Bai Junyu's face was full of smiles. Indeed, all of this was destined by fate. If they had not accidentally found this cave, their situation would be much worse than now. Hearing the word run, the three beasts could not help but look at each other. What they hated the most now was running away. In the desert world, they had to run for their lives almost every day, and it was really a life and death escape. Then what do we do now? Continue to stay here? Yuan Xiaoman could not help but ask. Mo Yunjue's eyes rippled with the light of thinking, and his voice was deep and confident. The best way for us now is to stay here. The cultivators of the various dynasties can't find us in the forest, so they will definitely wait for us near the city. Once we go to the city now, we will definitely be discovered. Staying here is the best choice. Hearing this, Dong Fangyu couldn't help but frown. Then, are we going to stay here for a while? With the character of the three great dynasties that were unwilling to give up, it was probably impossible for them to leave the city in a short period of time. As a result, they were trapped here. We need to stay here for now. I believe that the three dynasties won't be able to last long in the city. They will leave soon. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with bright and resplendent light. The cultivators of the three dynasties were full of confidence in themselves, because in the end, they would all appear in the same place. As long as the cultivators of the three dynasties found them before that, the Wind Spirit Tiger would still belong to them. Hearing this, everyone nodded. Given the current situation, this was their only choice. Let's complete the contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub while we're outside. In this way, even if we encounter cultivators from the other dynasties, they would be helpless. Chapter 1547. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, a smile appeared on everyone's face. The cultivators from the various empires would never have thought that they would form a contract with a Wind Spirit Tiger. As such, when they met again, many cultivators would not attack them after knowing that they had no hope. That was because it was meaningless. The only thing they needed to be wary of was the cultivators from the three empires, especially the Azure Forest Empire. With Fang Wenqing's narrow-minded character, even if he knew that there was no hope, he would still want to kill them to vent his anger. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at everyone and said, "There are only 3 Wind Spirit Tiger Cubs here. It's hard to decide who will form a contract with them." Hearing this, everyone's expression changed a little. Everyone wanted to have a contract beast. Moreover, the Wind Spirit Tiger was already an excellent contract beast. No one was willing to miss out on it. However, there were so many of them, but only 3 Wind Spirit Tigers. Therefore, there was bound to be someone who did not have one. The biggest problem was how to distribute them. For a moment, everyone fell into silence. It was indeed difficult for them to give up on such a matter. "I don't need it," Mo Yunjue said slowly. As soon as this was said, everyone looked at Mo Yunjue in surprise. In fact, from their point of view, Mo Yunjue would definitely get a Wind Spirit Tiger. This was because Mo Yunjue was extremely important in their team. He was powerful and would be of great help to the team. Therefore, 1 Wind Spirit Tiger belonged to Mo Yunjue, and the rest had no objections. However, Mo Yunjue chose to give up. This was beyond their expectations. Mo Yunjue? Everyone looked at Mo Yunjue in confusion. They did not understand why Mo Yunjue chose to give up. Mo Yunjue waved his hand and said, "In comparison, you guys need it more than I do. I don't want to form a contract with it for the time being." Everyone frowned. They felt that Mo Yunjue was doing this for them. They immediately said, "This." Bailey Hongzhuang looked deeply at Mo Yunjue. She knew that Mo Yunjue was speaking his true thoughts. Although she didn't know Mo Yunjue's identity, she was certain that Mo Yunjue's identity wasn't simple. With Mo Yunjue's status, it shouldn't be difficult for him to get a contract beast. What's more, Mo Yunjue was so strong. His contracted beast should also be very strong. Although the Wind Spirit Tiger's level was not bad, compared to Mo Yunjue, there was still a gap. Then, other than me and Mo Yunjue, all of you have chance. In order to be fair, you all stand in a circle. I will put the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers in the middle. Whoever the Wind Spirit Tiger goes to will be the master of the Wind Spirit Tiger. How about it? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at everyone. This was the best way she had come up with so far. Of course, if you can discuss it yourself, then we will do it according to your discussion. Boss, don't you need the Wind Spirit Tiger? Xia Jiqing saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had also withdrawn and couldn't help but ask. Boss's ability to contract beasts was obviously different from theirs. Each of them could only contract 1 beast, but Bailey Hongzhuang was obviously not the same. This Wind Spirit Tiger was also a very good beast. Did Boss not need it? Chapter 1548. Everyone couldn't help but look at Bai Shi, Xiao He and Xiao Bai beside Bailey Hongzhuang. It had to be said that Bailey Hongzhuang really didn't need them. The existence of Bai Shi, the Beast King, was already very amazing. Although they didn't know what species Xiao He and Xiao Bai were, they were very clear about how powerful Xiao He and Xiao Bai were. In comparison, the Wind Spirit Tigers were not as powerful as Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contract beasts. Mo Yunjue chuckled. You should think about your own situation. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing and the others looked at each other. Hongzhuang, let's do as you say. This was indeed the best way so far. No matter who the Wind Spirit Tigers chose, everyone would not be unwilling. It was really a good idea. After seeing everyone agree, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay. Soon, everyone stood in a circle. Bailey Hongzhuang put the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers in the center, and then she walked out of the circle. Now it was up to the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers to choose. Everyone's eyes fell on the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers. They were curious as to which of the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers would be fated with. The 3 Wind Spirit Tigers stood in the same place, apparently not knowing what choice they were making. Xia Jiqing and the others were looking at the Wind Spirit Tigers curiously and nervously, only hoping that the Wind Spirit Tigers would choose them. The 3 Wind Spirit Tigers squinted their small eyes. In fact, they had just been born and their eyes were not fully open yet. Even when they walked, they were still staggering. At this moment, they were constantly sniffing the air and walking forward. The way they walked and walked was indescribably cute. The process of choosing was very slow because the 3 Wind Spirit Tiger cubs were simply walking forward aimlessly, stopping, and even rolling. Bai Shi looked at the appearance of the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers, and his eyes flashed with a bright and strange light. Back then, when Master had just done July with it, it was probably similar to this. Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but bend down and look at the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers. Their cute appearance really made people's hearts soften. In this process, the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers also slowly approached the front. However, when the Wind Spirit Tigers made their choice, everyone looked at this scene and their expressions changed a bit. Because the Wind Spirit Tigers chose Xia Jiqing, Bai Junyu, and Yuan Xiaoman. After noticing this scene, Xia Jiqing's group's eyes couldn't help but have some fluctuations in their eyes. Gong Xiaoqing and the others looked at Xia Jiqing and the others. They did not expect that the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers would make such a choice. This was too special. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue looked at each other and fell into silence. Bailey Hongzhuang had always known that Bai Junyu liked Xia Jiqing, but Xia Jiqing had always been slow. In addition, although Bai Junyu usually talked a lot, when it came to critical moments, he always dropped the chain. Whenever it was time to confess, Bai Junyu would be too stupid to speak. However, this matter was only known to those who had known Bai Junyu for a long time. Since Yuan Xiaoman joined the team, everyone found that Yuan Xiaoman and Bai Junyu were very familiar with each other. Bai Junyu talked to Yuan Xiaoman more than Xia Jiqing. Chapter 1549. However, Bai Junyu himself was also a fool. Everyone had already felt that this situation was unusual, but Bai Junyu didn't know anything. Now that the relationship between Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman was getting closer, Yuan Jixin, who didn't know the reason, thought that Yuan Xiaoman and Bai Junyu were a couple. Therefore, Yuan Jixin was also very good to Bai Junyu, and sometimes created opportunities for Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman. As a result, this matter was completely messed up. Because this was a relationship problem between Xia Jiqing, Bai Junyu, and Yuan Xiaoman, no one dared to intervene. However, now that the three wind spirit tigers had made such a choice, this love triangle was really not messy enough. Even though Mo Yunjue didn't know much about what had happened before, during this period of time, with his keen observation, he also discovered the problem. The atmosphere froze for a moment, and everyone looked at each other. For such a strange situation, everyone really didn't know what to say. After a while, Bailey Hongzhuang took the lead and said, "Since the wind spirit tiger has made a choice, then I will seal the wind spirit tiger first." With Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone nodded, and the slightly awkward atmosphere eased a bit. Bailey Hongzhuang picked up a wind spirit tiger and turned to the crowd. "You wait outside now. I will go into the cave to seal it." Okay. Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the cave with the wind spirit tiger, and the three beasts stayed at the door. This kind of very important thing couldn't be disturbed, otherwise it would be terrible if it failed. Bailey Hongzhuang sat in front of the wind spirit tiger, and the yuan power and mental power in her body spread out at the same time. The requirement for the seal was very high for the mental power, and the consumption was also very high, so yuan power was used as an auxiliary. What she needed to do was to use her mental power to write a rune and seal the wind spirit tiger in it. Bailey Hongzhuang divided her mental power into strands of filament-like existence and used them to write the rune. In her previous life, her cultivation was stronger than it was now. In this life, her elemental energy was undoubtedly weaker. However, after transmigrating, her spiritual energy was much stronger than before. In this way, although there was a certain gap in strength, she believed that the success rate wouldn't be much lower than in her previous life. Under the control of Bailey Hongzhuang, strands of spiritual power intertwined and weaved into the shape of a rune. Just looking at the countless strands of spiritual energy was enough to make one's scalp tingle. Even Bailey Hongzhuang's forehead was covered in sweat. That was because the consumption of energy was not small at all. While Bailey Hongzhuang was doing the sealing, the wind spirit tiger cub stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang. It sat there motionlessly, as if an invisible force had sealed it. As Bailey Hongzhuang sealed the wind spirit tiger cub in the cave, Gong Shaoqing and the others sat down on the ground. They had never been in contact with a sealing master, and they didn't know how long Bailey Hongzhuang would take to seal it. The only thing they could do was to wait outside. I don't know if the boss can succeed. There was a touch of worry in Xia Jiqing's eyes. It was the wind spirit tiger that ran to her side that was being sealed. Chapter 1550. With Hongzhuang's strength, I believe there won't be a problem. Dong Fangyu looked at Xia Jiqing with a smile. From the time they met Hongzhuang until now, as long as Hongzhuang had confidence in something, there had never been a problem. Xia Jiqing held her chin with both hands, and there was still some worry in her eyes. She had always believed in the strength of the boss, but she had never heard that the boss could seal a monster beast. Moreover, she had never known that the boss could seal a monster beast. Although she and the wind spirit tiger cub had only met for a short time, looking at its ignorant and cute appearance, her heart softened. Even if the contract could not be successful, she did not want the wind spirit tiger cub to die. Yes, when has the boss ever had a problem? Yuan Jixin smiled. There will be no problem. Xia Jiqing nodded slightly. She also believed in the boss. The boss had never had a problem doing things, and she believed that this time would be no exception. Before, she was worried and confused, but now that she thought about it carefully, her mood calmed down. Mo Yunjue sat quietly on the side and entered a state of cultivation. After everyone saw Mo Yunjue like this, there was a trace of admiration in their hearts. In their team, the strongest were Mo Yunjue and Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue had always been meticulous in their cultivation and seized all the time to cultivate. In the process of getting along, they had already understood each other clearly. Just like Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue on the Heaven Stairway, their performance was so amazing. For a long time, they had also been cultivating desperately, but compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, there was still a certain gap. Gong Xiaoqing's feelings were the deepest. When he was at the Azure Water School, everyone said that he was the one who cultivated the most. Dongfang Yu felt that he did not know how to enjoy life and only knew how to cultivate foolishly. Ever since he met Bailey Hongzhuang, he knew that there was always someone better than him. Bailey Hongzhuang was far more serious than him in cultivation. This was also the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang was stronger than them, even though she was younger than them. Thinking of this, Gong Xiaoqing couldn't help but glance at Dongfang Yu. Back then, although Dongfang Yu's cultivation talent was not bad, he had never put much effort into it. Later on, they suddenly started cultivating desperately because of Bailey Hongzhuang. Speaking of which, after meeting Bailey Hongzhuang, their lives changed a lot. In the next moment, Gong Xiaoqing also entered a state of cultivation. The other cultivators closed their eyes to cultivate. Only Xia Jiqing, Bai Junyu, and Yuan Xiaoman were still sitting and waiting. Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman had to look after the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub, so they couldn't cultivate. Xia Jiqing was wholeheartedly concerned about the matter of Bailey Hongzhuang's seal. Even if she was cultivating, she could not calm down and could only wait. Jiqing, Hongzhuang will succeed. Bai Junyu looked at Xia Jiqing, his eyes full of concern and relief. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing nodded slightly. Just as she was about to talk to Bai Junyu, Yuan Xiaoman's voice sounded. Junyu is right. Jiqing, you don't have to worry too much. Boss will definitely be fine. Yuan Xiaoman was sitting beside Bai Junyu, her charming face filled with a thick smile. Xia Jiqing swallowed back the words she was about to say. She immediately nodded, and the smile on her face revealed a bit of awkwardness that only she understood. Chapter 1551. Bai Junyu noticed that Xia Jiqing's expression seemed to be a little different, and his eyes could not help but flash a hint of doubt. Jiqing, did you want to say something just now? Xia Jiqing looked up and saw Yuan Xiaoman and Bai Junyu looking at her with concern. She shook her head. No. Oh. Bai Junyu looked away with some disappointment. He wanted to confess to Xia Jiqing more than once, but he couldn't say anything at the critical moment. Moreover, he recently faintly felt that the distance between him and Jiqing was gradually alienating, but he didn't understand what was going on. It was really depressing. He wanted to find a chance to ask Jiqing, but he was worried that all this was just his own misunderstanding. If Jiqing didn't like him, then once he confessed, their relationship would become particularly awkward. When he thought of this, he was even more unable to say it. Junyu, what name are you going to give the contract beast after you contract it? Yuan Xiaoman teased the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub in front of her while asking Bai Junyu. Hearing this, Bai Junyu thought for a while, then looked at Xia Jiqing next to him and said, Jiqing, what name are you going to give it? Xia Jiqing was slightly stunned, and she couldn't help but think about it. She really didn't think about this problem before. Once the contract was made, she would have to give the contract beast a name. Just what name should she give it? Xia Jiqing frowned. It was really not easy to give a name. Suddenly, Xia Jiqing's eyes fell on Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Boss's name was so simple, she should follow Boss when it came to naming. My contract beast's name will be Xiao Feng. Xia Jiqing smiled slightly. Wind Spirit Tiger. She chose the first word. Not only was it easy to remember, but it was also the same type as Xiao He and Xiao Bai. In this way, it was very cooperative. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also nodded after hearing Xia Jiqing's name. Sure enough, it wasn't just their master who didn't have a talent for naming. Xia Jiqing wasn't much better. Now that they had another contracted beast to keep them company, they were happy to see it. After hearing the name given by Bailey Hongzhuang, Bai Junyu immediately understood the origin of the name and had an idea in his mind. If that's the case, then my contract beast will be called Little Tiger. It's simple and easy to remember. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but look at Bai Junyu. One was Little Wind, the other was Little Tiger. Their contract beasts were both wind spirit tigers, which was great. Yuan Xiaoman frowned, her mind constantly thinking, and said, "Then my contract beast will be called Xiaoling, adding up to a wind spirit tiger. Isn't that good?" With Yuan Xiaoman's words falling, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu also nodded slightly, but they couldn't help but feel a little strange. Gong Shaoqing and the others, who were originally cultivating, heard the words of Xia Jiqing and the others, and the helplessness in their hearts became deeper and deeper. If this complicated love triangle continued to develop like this, they really didn't know what it would become in the future. They wanted to remind Bai Junyu, but they couldn't understand Xia Jiqing's thoughts. In fact, Xia Jiqing had never expressed her thoughts. When Yuan Xiaoman had not joined the team, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu were also like this. Chapter 1552. After the three beasts saw this scene, they also looked at each other. They knew nothing about this kind of thing, so it was better to leave these things to them to deal with. Xia Jiqing fell into silence, and her eyes couldn't help but look at the cave. She could feel the faint fluctuations of power coming from inside. However, she was not clear about the specific situation inside. Yuan Xiaoman sat next to Bai Junyu and talked with him from time to time. Sometimes there was a burst of laughter. Apparently they were talking happily. Feeling such an atmosphere, Xia Jiqing didn't know why she felt that her mood was particularly irritable. She immediately closed her eyes and entered the state of cultivation. It was a pity that under such mood, her heart could not calm down at all, nor could she enter the state of cultivation. She could only carefully listen to the conversation between Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman. Yuan Xiaoman and Bai Junyu were actually just talking about some trivial things, but Xia Jiqing felt that her heart was blocked for a while, and she didn't know what to say. It was as if there were countless flies flying around her, making her very irritable. She just wanted to be free from it. Under such circumstances, Xia Jiqing only felt that time was really passing like a year, and it was extremely difficult to bear. In the cave, Bailey Hongzhuang was meticulously carrying out the seal. Her mental power had been tight, carefully controlling every change. From the time she crossed over to the present, she had not used the seal for a long time. Therefore, she had to be more careful. Not to mention that this wind spirit tiger cub was her contract beast. Just thinking about the trust and expectation in the mother's eyes when she left, she must be careful and not let the wind spirit tiger be in danger. This time was very slow for Xia Jiqing, and it was also a very slow process for Bailey Hongzhuang. The sweat on Bailey Hongzhuang's forehead slowly dripped down, but her eyes were tightly fixed on the seal in front of her, and there was no distraction. Finally, under the precise control of Bailey Hongzhuang, a seal quietly formed. Bailey Hongzhuang's hand gesture changed, and a seal quietly appeared, and then the wind spirit tiger cub was sealed inside. A dazzling light appeared, bright and dazzling. Even Gong Shaoqing and the others, who were cultivating outside the cave, could not help but open their eyes when they noticed the light. That was because the light was simply too dazzling. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but stand up. Her hands were tightly clasped together. She looked at the cave nervously and worriedly. She didn't know what the final result would be. Did the boss succeed? Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman also stood up at the same time, nervously looking at the cave, hoping that Hongzhuang would bring them good news. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not come out even after the light disappeared. After noticing this situation, Xia Jiqing's heart couldn't help but sink. Boss hasn't come out yet. Could it be that he failed? Hearing this, Gong Shaoqing and the others looked at each other. They had never seen a seal before and naturally did not understand what this situation meant. Only Mo Yunjue's eyes flashed with a light of understanding. He had seen sealing masters seal demonic beasts before, so he was not unfamiliar with this scene. Chapter 1553. With Mo Yunjue's voice falling, everyone looked at Mo Yunjue. For a long time, Mo Yunjue had been an experienced and knowledgeable existence in their team. Mo Yunjue had heard a lot of things that they didn't understand. It was precisely because of this that everyone had always admired Mo Yunjue. Boss succeeded? Xia Jiqing looked nervously at Mo Yunjue. Then why hasn't Boss come out yet? Mo Yunjue shook his head slightly. According to my understanding, the appearance of that light is a sign of success. But why Hong Zhuang hasn't come out, I don't know. Gong Xiaoqing and the others looked at each other. Even Mo Yunjue didn't know the specific situation. They didn't know either. There was only one way now, and that was to wait, because no one dared to go in and disturb Bailey Hongzhuang. Once it affected Bailey Hongzhuang, it was likely to cause Hongzhuang to fail. This was something that no one wanted to see. Compared to the various guesses in everyone's hearts, Bailey Hongzhuang sat on the ground and gasped for breath, wiping the sweat on her forehead. She had to admit that this seal was indeed a laborious thing. It was no wonder that every sealer would ask for a lot of rewards when sealing, because this was really not an easy thing to do. After not sealing for such a long time, she only felt that her technique was a bit rusty compared to before, so she spent more energy. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the intact monster egg in front of her. Although she still looked very tired, there was a smile on her face. Fortunately, her seal was a success. She didn't fail. Under the anxious waiting of Xia Jiqing and the others, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly appeared in everyone's sight. Seeing this, Xia Jiqing and the others immediately greeted her. "Boss, did you succeed?" Looking at Xia Jiqing's nervous look, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, "Guess." Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was still in the mood to joke with her, Xia Jiqing immediately knew the result. Success. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "It's inside. Go take a look." Xia Jiqing's eyes lit up, and she immediately walked into the cave. She couldn't wait to see the appearance of the monster egg. After entering the cave, Xia Jiqing saw a yellow monster egg appear in front of her. The round and smooth eggshell was covered with complicated patterns. At a glance, it gave off a mysterious feeling, causing people to involuntarily feel a little shocked. Xia Jiqing took the monster beast egg out of the cave. Bai Junyu and the others also greeted her after seeing the monster beast egg. In reality, this was the first time they had seen a demonic beast egg, and they couldn't help but feel a wave of novelty in their hearts. So this is a demonic beast egg. Yuan Xiaoman's face was full of curiosity. Although she had a rough idea of what a monster beast egg looked like, seeing it with her own eyes still gave her a strong feeling. "It's amazing." Bai Junyu couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 1554. Just as everyone was curiously sizing up the demonic beast egg, Mo Yunjue slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His handsome face was filled with concern as he asked, "How are you?" He knew that a sealer would consume a lot of mental power during the sealing process. He noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's pale face and weak expression. Come to think of it, Bailey Hongzhuang did not come out previously because she had consumed too much of her mental power and could not come out for a while. In his impression, a sealer was not young anymore. They were rather powerful, and their mental power was even more shocking. Given Bailey Hongzhuang's strength and age, it was already very shocking that she could seal a demonic beast. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang was sealing a wind spirit tiger, which was even more remarkable. Logically speaking, this was simply impossible, but it happened right in front of his eyes, so he had to believe it. Sensing Mo Yunjue's concern, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, "I'm fine. I'm just a little exhausted. I'll be able to recover after resting for a while." "You won't be able to fully recover your mental power in a short period of time. You must rest well. There's no rush for this, so don't risk your life." His dark and deep eyes were filled with emotions, and there was even a trace of heartache in the depths of his eyes. As he spent more time with Bailey Hongzhuang, he became more aware of Bailey Hongzhuang's hardworking personality. No matter what it was, she would always do her best to do it. Regarding this point, even many men were ashamed of their inferiority. She was always so bright, so beautiful, and so memorable. The longer he spent time with her, the stronger his feelings were. Bailey Hongzhuang did not notice the change in Mo Yunjue's expression. She immediately smiled and said, "I understand, don't worry." Given her current state, it was indeed impossible for her to seal a second time. At the very least, she would need to rest for a while to recover. Otherwise, not to mention her body's condition, the seal would fail if there was even the slightest mistake. They had spent so much effort to obtain 3 wind spirit tiger cubs, so they definitely could not treat them like this. After Xia Jiqing and the others observed the monster eggs for a moment, they returned to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and asked with concern, "Boss, how are you?" Xia Jiqing was a little annoyed. She was so focused on the monster beast egg that she didn't even notice her boss's body. Thinking about it, boss must have used up a lot of energy to seal them. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "I'm fine. Don't worry." As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on the demonic beast egg. She continued, "This demonic beast egg has been successfully sealed. You only need to drip a drop of blood on it and perform the 7 months ritual with it." Hearing this, Xia Jiqing nodded slightly and sat down beside Bailey Hongzhuang. "Boss, thank you." If Bailey Hongzhuang had not thought of a way to deal with the various dynasties, they would not have been able to obtain the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub. If Boss had not successfully sealed the Wind Spirit Tiger with the sealing technique, she would not have been able to obtain a Wind Spirit Tiger contract beast. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xia Jiqing. Her lips curled into a smile. "With the feelings between you and me, saying such words is too much of an outsider." Just as Xia Jiqing had given her the 9-tailed zither, they never cared about these things. Chapter 1555. She had not practiced the sealing technique in her previous life for a long time. When Bailey Hongzhuang used it again, she only felt a sense of familiarity that she had not felt for a long time. She had never been willing to forget the skills she had learned because of lack of practice. Sometimes she had the opportunity to try it out, which was not necessarily a bad thing. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's warm smile, Xia Jiqing's eyes became brighter. For a long time, the most fortunate thing for her was knowing the boss and following her until now. Otherwise, she would still be a student of the Kanglan College. Perhaps she had entered the special enrollment class, but it was far from comparable to her current results. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman beside Xia Jiqing and said, "It takes a lot of mental power to seal a monster egg. I can't continue to seal it today. Let's continue tomorrow." Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman quickly said, "We are not in a hurry. You have a good rest." Bailey Hongzhuang being able to help them seal the monster egg was already something that made them feel very fortunate. How could they have any other requests? Bailey Hongzhuang and the others returned to the cave again. In this forest, there were still other teams of cultivators passing by. Therefore, they still had to ensure that they were not discovered. Fortunately, the area where they were located was very remote. Generally, cultivators would not come here. With the improvement of their strength now, they did not have to worry about spending the night outside. However, with the existence of Baishur, they did not need to worry about this problem at all. It was because of Baishur's aura that there were no monsters within 100 miles. Therefore, when the cultivators passed by here, they did not stop at all and left directly. Compared to the calmness of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, the mood of the cultivators of the 3 dynasties was extremely bad. They had searched the surrounding area again and again, but the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty seemed to have disappeared into thin air. They could not find any traces at all. This really made them annoyed. Under their observation, they realized that the cultivators from the other dynasties were also unable to find it. Even with so many of them searching together, they still could not find it. The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty were truly extraordinarily capable. I don't know where these guys went. They couldn't have gone to a city far away, could they? Fang Wensheng had an impatient look on his face. Of all people, it just had to be a cultivator from the Tiangang dynasty. Compared to his previous arrogant words, he now felt that his face had been slapped painfully. Our pursuit speed isn't slow. If they've gone to a city far away, we should be able to find some clues. Cheng Yifeng's brows were tightly furrowed. After they had not found anything, they had met up with each other. They both knew that the other had not found anything. The characteristics of Bailey Hongzhuang and her group were very obvious. As long as any cultivator saw them, they would definitely be able to recognize them. However, along the way, they had asked many cultivators who came from other places, but they did not get any information at all. Just this point alone was enough to prove that this was not the case. Perhaps they had overlooked something in their search. Forget it. Let's just guard this city. They'll come out sooner or later. Chapter 1556. Even if they found the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty on the day of the assessment, they could still snatch it. He did not believe that the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty were so capable that they could hide from their sight during this period of time. Hearing Yu Junfei's words, Fang Wencheng also nodded his head. He had already patrolled this area several times and had long lost his patience. It was impossible for him to continue patrolling, so he might as well wait here peacefully. The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty would not be able to run anywhere. Cheng Huffing saw that Fang Wencheng and Yu Junfei had made up their minds, and a complicated light flashed across his dark eyes. For some reason, he had an ominous feeling in his heart. In the beginning, he did not take the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty seriously. However, after the simple contact, he felt that the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty were completely out of his control, and it was beyond his expectations. He had a feeling that the development of the situation would not be as simple as they thought. Perhaps the other party would do something unexpected again. However, given the current situation, he really couldn't think of anything unexpected that would happen. Even if the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty found helpers, as long as the cultivators from the three dynasties joined forces, ordinary people would not be their match at all. Thinking of this, Cheng Huffing let go of the worry in his heart and decided to wait in the city with Yu Junfei and the rest. He had specially arranged for the cultivators to pay attention to the outside of the city. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest wanted to go around the city, they would still notice them. He did not believe that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest would not enter the city. Bringing along 3 wind spirit tiger cubs was already extremely eye-catching. Not to mention them, even if other cultivators saw this scene, they would also attack them. Therefore, this secret could not be kept. He believed that even if the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty avoided them, this news would spread to their ears soon. However, the cultivators from the 3 dynasties had never expected that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest would directly form a contract with the wind spirit tiger. If they continued to search now, there would still be a glimmer of hope. However, when they chose to wait, this hope was completely shattered. The next day, everyone walked out of the cave again. Bailey Hongzhuang's mental energy had recovered after a night's rest. She immediately began to seal the second wind spirit tiger. But this time, the one who was nervous and worried was Yuan Xiaoman. After all, every seal had a certain amount of risk, and the success rate was never 100%. While Bailey Hongzhuang was sealing the wind spirit tiger, Xia Jiqing was making a contract with a monster egg outside the cave. Last night, everyone had gathered together, and Boss needed to rest, so she did not make the contract. Now was the best time to make the contract. After knowing that Xia Jiqing was going to do July, Gong Shaoqing and the others stood up and guarded her. He also had to be careful with the contract. If he was disturbed, the consequences of failing the contract would be very serious. While Bailey Hongzhuang and others were busy with their own affairs, Bewitching of Tiangang's sect also showed a smile on his face. Chapter 1557. A charming smile appeared on his godlike handsome face. His pair of black eyes were overflowing with light, bright and dazzling. As long as Hongzhuang came out of the assessment, they would not need to be separated in the future. As soon as he thought of this, Bewitching's mood became better. This was something he was looking forward to. However, a touch of worry quietly reflected in his eyes. Bewitching's thin lips slightly pursed, revealing a bit of nervousness. Since Hong Zhuang participated in the assessment, he had no news of Hong Zhuang. He did not know whether Hong Zhuang was safe or not. Han Shilling was also a variable. If Han Shilling was determined to make a move on Hong Zhuang, with the strength of Hong Zhuang's team, it was really unknown. Because of this, on one hand, Bewitching was extremely eager for the assessment to end quickly. On the other hand, he was very afraid. Yes, for as long as he could remember, he had never known what fear was. However, ever since he met Bailey Hong Zhuang, he understood what fear was. That kind of worry, apprehension, and anxiety was enough to drive people crazy. He knew very well that Hong Zhuang was his weakness. She was his reverse scale and the person he was most worried about. Now, he only hoped that Hong Zhuang would return safely. In the future, with him guarding Hong Zhuang, he would not let Hong Zhuang be in danger alone. Ever since his master went to investigate the previous news, he had not returned. The situation in the sect was now completely under his control. He had also sent people to investigate again, but all of this had been done in a very secretive manner. Now that so much time had passed, it would be even more difficult to investigate. In this kind of matter, there was only one place that could help: Shurtian Pavilion. Shurtian Pavilion was the most famous assassin organization in the Shangxian continent. At the same time, it also had the largest information network in the Shangxian continent. Whether it was to kill someone or to obtain information, as long as you could pay the price, the other party could find out the information you wanted. All along, he did not have a good impression of Shurtian Pavilion. This was because such a huge force was completely shrouded in darkness, unable to see the sun. But at the same time, he could not help but admire the power of Shurtian Pavilion. To be able to gather so much information, one's connections had to be shockingly powerful. He had spent so much time but still could not find out where Hong Zhuang's parents were imprisoned. Therefore, he decided to seek help from Shurtian Pavilion. Although he could not find out, he believed that Shurtian Pavilion could find out. However, after he went to Shurtian Pavilion, the other party did not immediately accept the task, nor did he completely refuse it. He only left a sentence. Regarding these important matters, the ordinary people of Shurtian Pavilion could not make a decision. Only after their young master returned could they decide whether to accept or not. If he was willing to wait, he would wait. If he wasn't willing to wait, he could just give up. Bewitching had no choice but to wait. His master of Shurtian Pavilion's back. Shurtian Pavilion. Shurtian Pavilion Shurtians of Shurtian Pavilion. Shurtian of Pavilion. Of Shurtian Pavilion of. He believed that he would be able to obtain some news by then. Chapter 1558. After 2 days of hard work by Bailey Hong Zhuang, she finally succeeded in sealing the remaining 2 wind spirit tiger cubs. For Bailey Hong Zhuang's 100% success rate, Mo Yunjue and the others had no other thoughts other than admiration. Every time Hong Zhuang did something, it was an unspeakable shock. After such a long time, they had already understood. Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman were both in the process of contracting, and Xia Jiqing had completed the contract 2 days ago. At this moment, Xiao Feng was lying comfortably in her arms, looking very intimate. Mo Yunjue sat next to Bailey Hong Zhuang, and the two chatted idly. After the assessment is over, which sect are you going to join? Bailey Hong Zhuang looked curiously at Mo Yunjue. The rest of them naturally did not need to be said. They would definitely join Tiangang's sect. However, after getting along with Mo Yunjue for so long, she had never heard Mo Yunjue talk about this. Mo Yunjue smiled and looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang. Do you want to invite me to join Tiangang's sect? Bailey Hong Zhuang shrugged. If you are willing, then it is naturally excellent. They were originally a team representing Tiangang's sect to participate in the assessment. After Yuan Jixin and Yuan Xiaoman joined their team, they had already made up their minds to join Tiangang's sect. This way, they would still be able to gather together after the competition ended. Mo Yunjue had a trace of mystery from beginning to end, and he rarely said his own thoughts, so no one knew what he was thinking. Now that the assessment was about to end, it was inevitable to talk about this topic. Mo Yunjue chuckled and then said, "I don't intend to join any sect." As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but be stunned for a moment, and looked at Mo Yun strangely. All along, she had only thought that Mo Yunjue had a sect in his heart that he wanted to join, but she had never thought that Mo Yunjue did not intend to join a sect from beginning to end. After all, there were many sects in Shangxian continent. Although Tiangang sect was one of the more famous sects, there were many equally famous sections. However, with her understanding of Mo Yunjue, his words should not be a lie. Bailey Hongzhuang's mind turned thousands of thoughts. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up, and a thought emerged in her mind. Perhaps Mo Yunjue was originally a sect member, just like Han Xiling was originally a cultivator of Tiangang sect, but still came to participate in the assessment. Ever since she had known Mo Yunjue, she always felt that Mo Yunjue had an unfathomable feeling. If he was really a cultivator in the sect, or if his status was even higher, then all of these could be linked together. Noticing the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, Mo Yunjue did not speak. With Bailey Hongzhuang's intelligence, he believed that she would be able to guess something. Bailey Hongzhuang did not ask any more questions after having some guesses in her heart. If Mo Yunjue wanted to say, he would have said it long ago. Since Mo Yunjue did not say much, then she would not ask too much, because they were friends. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the contract between Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman. Fortunately, the Wind Spirit Tiger was not as abnormal as Bai Shi. Previously, when she contracted with the White Lion, it gave her a big fright. She believed that everyone would be able to complete the contract smoothly. Chapter 1559. However, Mo Yunjue's gaze suddenly focused on Bailey Hongzhuang. His expression was filled with astonishment and shock. Isn't this the Lan family's exclusive jade pendant? How did it end up in Hongzhuang's hands? Furthermore, Hongzhuang was wearing it in front of her chest. This meant that, at that moment, 1,000 thoughts ran through Mo Yunjue's mind. This was extremely strange. Bailey Hongzhuang felt Mo Yunjue's gaze and couldn't help but turn her head to look at Mo Yunjue suspiciously. She didn't understand why Mo Yunjue was looking at her. However, when she realized that Mo Yunjue was looking at her, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but grab the jade pendant in front of her chest. She had always kept the jade pendant in her clothes, but had accidentally revealed it just now. However, Mo Yunjue's astonished gaze was clearly filled with shock and disbelief. Could it be that Mo Yunjue also recognized this jade pendant? Hongzhuang, you're related to the Lan family? Mo Yunjue lowered his voice. Only Bailey Hongzhuang could hear his deep and magnetic voice. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Her expression also changed a little, but she didn't say anything. Until now, only Bewitching knew about her relationship with the Lan family. This was because her relationship with the Lan family was simply too complicated and involved too deeply. If anyone else knew about this, there could be risks. Thus, she had never told anyone about this until now. However, she never thought that Mo Yunjue would notice it now. Noticing the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, Mo Yunjue slowly said, "We've known each other for such a long time. You should believe that I wouldn't do anything that would harm you. If you're still worried, then I won't ask. I'll pretend that I didn't see anything." Mo Yunjue's face rippled with a faint smile as he comforted Bailey Hongzhuang. He never wanted Bailey Hongzhuang to feel any pressure. Just by looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, he could guess that this matter was far from simple. He knew Bailey Hongzhuang's background very well. She was the daughter of the general's household, but in reality, she wasn't General Bailey's biological daughter. As for the rest, he didn't know too much. On one hand, Bewitching was by Bailey Hongzhuang's side. If he deliberately tried to find out more, it was very likely that Bewitching find out. Moreover, No matter what Bailey Hongzhuang's background was, he only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could live well and didn't intend to get to the bottom of it. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue's deep eyes. This was the first time she had seen Mo Yunjue's eyes so clearly after knowing him for so long. Those deep, dark eyes were filled with concern and kindness, magnanimous and clear. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at those eyes. All along, Mo Yunjue had always been wearing a veil of mystery. No one could see through his thoughts. At this moment, Mo Yunjue exposed his thoughts to her for the first time. So magnanimous, without the slightest impurity. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang felt relieved. That's right, Mo Yunjue had always been her good friend. Ever since they met, he had always been helping her. If Mo Yunjue had bad intentions towards her, he wouldn't have waited until now. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel apologetic. Mo Yunjue, I'm sorry. I was too nervous just now. Chapter 1560. Almost in a short period of time, Mo Yunjue had already understood a lot of things. He and Bailey Hongzhuang had known each other for so long, but he had never seen Bailey Hongzhuang reveal such an expression. It could be seen how important this matter was to Bailey Hongzhuang. He believed that Bailey Hongzhuang believed in him, but because this matter was too important, she was so vigilant. Hongzhuang, in fact, the power behind me is not small. If you need me, just tell me, and I will do my best to help you. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, and there was a trace of emotion in her heart. Her biggest gain from the assessment was the improvement of her cultivation base, but she also met a group of trustworthy friends. Thank you. Mo Yunjue waved his hand. Between you and me, there is no need to say thank you. He had never wanted to care about a person until Bailey Hongzhuang appeared. As time passed, his interest in Bailey Hongzhuang had changed from the initial interest to a deep love. Even if he knew that there was another very good man in her heart, he was still happy. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others finally left the cave and embarked on their journey. They had stayed near the cave for a few days, and now there was not much time left for the assessment to end. It was better for them to rush to the last city as soon as possible. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked, and their team had once again grown a bit, with 3 new members. Bai Shi, Xiaohei, and Xiao Bai had also become friends with the Wind Spirit Tiger in a short period of time. One must know that there were only 8 cultivators in their team, but now there were 6 contract beasts. Once this formation was revealed, many cultivators would be astonished. Xia Jiqing walked beside Bailey Hongzhuang and asked with a smile, "Boss, we have been here for several days. Do you think the cultivators of the 3 dynasties are still waiting for us in front?" Bailey Hongzhuang's bright black eyes turned, and the corners of her mouth curved into a playful smile. "I believe that they are still waiting and have not left." Just from the way the 3 empires were determined to obtain the Wind Spirit Tiger, it was clear that they were obsessed with it. As long as they did not receive any news about the Wind Spirit Tiger, they would not leave. Then what should we do? Xia Jiqing couldn't help but frown. If they met the teams of the 3 dynasties now, wouldn't it be a fierce battle? The 3 Wind Spirit Tigers were still very young, and their battle prowess was not strong. It seemed a little too difficult for them to deal with the teams of 3 large empires by themselves. The cultivators of the 3 dynasties may not all make a move. As long as they know that the Wind Spirit Tiger has been contracted by us, this battle will no longer have any meaning. Mo Yunjue's handsome face was filled with a confident and wise smile. If he guessed correctly, at least the cultivators of the Martial Dynasty would not make a move. Cheng Hefeng was a smart person. For something that was useless, he would not do it. On the one hand, it was meaningless, and on the other hand, he would offend an opponent. The biggest feature of the Smiling Tiger was that they could change their expressions in an instant without feeling the slightest disharmony. This was his strength. Chapter 1561. In that case, we only need to deal with the cultivators from the 2 dynasties. Gong Xiaoqing raised his eyebrows slightly. Even if there was one less dynasty team, it would still be troublesome to fight. This was because the other party had more people than them. The total number of people from the two teams was 3 times their number. There was still a certain amount of risk in this fierce battle. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. We'll take it one step at a time. There's no need to think too much. Even if we appear, the cultivators from the Cloud Sword Dynasty might not dare to fight. As soon as these words came out, everyone could not help but be stunned for a moment. They did not understand what Bailey Hongzhuang meant by this sentence. The relationship between the Cloud Sword Dynasty and the Azure Forest Dynasty is probably not good. The reason they can form an alliance is because of the famous Martial Dynasty. Once the Martial Dynasty leaves, the alliance between the Cloud Sword Dynasty and the Azure Forest Dynasty will naturally cease to exist. There is no trust between the two dynasties' teams. When they fight, they have to be wary of whether the other party will plot against them. Therefore, they might not make a move. Mo Yunjue's eyes flashed with a wise light. This situation was not complicated. He was very familiar with the grudges between the Azure Forest Dynasty and the famed Sword Dynasty. It was precisely because of this that he and Bailey Hongzhuang were so calm, because they must have calculated everything. Following Mo Yunjue's words, Jiqing and the others finally reacted. Their faces were filled with a touch of admiration. This situation was something they had never thought of before. They did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue to be so meticulous. In comparison, the gap between the two of them was really huge. After confirming this point, the worry on the faces of the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty completely disappeared. The cultivators from the 3 dynasties had been waiting in the city. However, several days had passed, and they still did not receive any news about the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty. This really made them depressed. The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Perhaps they went directly to the city in front of them? For a moment, the cultivators from the 3 dynasties were not sure what to do. In fact, they even had plans to head to the next city. After all, they couldn't just stay here forever. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were not far from the city. Hence, they arrived at the city before noon. Fang Wencheng was cultivating in his room. In fact, he hadn't been able to calm down and cultivate for the past few days. His whole heart was on the wind spirit tiger. At this moment, a series of hurried footsteps sounded outside his door, followed by a surprised voice that entered the room. Captain, Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators have appeared. The cultivators from Cloud Sword Dynasty and Martial Dynasty have already gone to see it. You better hurry up. Hearing this, Fang Wencheng immediately jumped down from the bed and quickly opened the door. Without hesitation, he rushed to the place where Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were. No matter what, he could not be slower than the cultivators of the other 2 dynasties. At the same time, Cheng Hefeng and Yu Junfei were also running. After waiting for so long, they finally got news of the Tiangang dynasty cultivators. Now, they wanted to see how the Tiangang dynasty cultivators were going to run. Chapter 1562. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had just entered the city when they realized that many cultivators in the city were looking at them in astonishment. Aren't those the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty? They actually dare to swagger into the city? The cultivators from the 3 dynasties are waiting for them. Won't they be caught by the cultivators from the 3 dynasties? Are the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty crazy or something? They are really fearless. In an instant, everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest in disbelief. This was really too strange. If it was any other team that encountered such a situation, they would have run away quickly. Who would be like the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty who would throw themselves at the muzzle of the gun? Everyone looked at them curiously, wanting to know how the show would unfold. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest understood when they felt the crowd's gaze. It seemed that everyone already knew about this news. When the crowd saw the 6 contracted beasts walking side by side behind Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, they were completely dumbfounded. Fuck, the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty are really heaven-defying. There are only 8 people in a team, and they actually have 6 contracted beasts? We are a team from a large dynasty, but we don't even have a single contracted beast. They are just a middle-sized dynasty, and they actually have 6 contracted beasts. I heard that the cultivators from the 3 dynasties have been looking for them because they snatched the 3 wind spirit tiger cubs. Now it seems that the rumors are true. They have already snatched the cubs, and they are still swaggering here. Don't tell me they want to return the cubs to the 3 dynasties? The crowd looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest in astonishment. They simply could not understand. Very quickly, Fang Wensheng, Yu Junfei, and Cheng Hafeng led the cultivators from their respective dynasties and rushed over. When they saw the 3 wind spirit tiger cubs behind Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, their eyes lit up with excitement. Bailey Hongzhuang, your courage really isn't small. You actually dared to enter the city so openly. Fang Wensheng sneered. He did not care whether Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were crazy or not. He only needed to snatch the cubs back. Bailey Hongzhuang's exquisite face was filled with astonishment. Puzzled, she asked, "Young Master Fang, what do you mean by that?" Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was still going to argue with him, Fang Wensheng went straight to the point. "Now, obediently hand over the cubs, and I can let you guys have a quick death." When he said that, the faces of the people's faces darkened. Fang Wensheng's words were really disgusting. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled, looking at Fang Wensheng with eyes that were cold and murderous. "Fang Wensheng, you really think you're some big shot, huh? Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue?" Xiao He and Xiao Bai had already jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders. The 2 little guys' eyes were also filled with anger. "This Fang Wensheng is really annoying. If I don't kill him, I won't be able to get rid of the hatred in my heart." Xiao He's face was filled with anger. There were all kinds of birds in the forest. This Fang Wensheng was born with a face that deserved a beating. If he was not taught a lesson, he would not be able to take it lying down. Chapter 1563. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang dared to mock him, Fang Wensheng was stunned for a moment. He was so angry that he laughed. "Bailey Hongzhuang, you are quite brave. Thank you for the compliment." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "I have always been brave." Cheng Hafeng's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He still had a warm smile on his face. "Miss Bailey, as long as you hand over the wind spirit tiger, we cultivators from the Martial Dynasty will leave. What do you think?" Cheng Hafeng was different from Fang Wensheng. After the previous encounter, he understood that the Tiangang dynasty could rely on a middle-sized dynasty team to make a name for themselves in the assessment competition. It was not just luck. At least, the other party was able to make them be chased by so many demonic beasts last time. Just this method alone was very impressive. If possible, he did not want to offend such a capable opponent. Seeing that Cheng Hafeng's words were different from his, Fang Wensheng's expression changed. Wasn't this the same as undermining him in front of his face? Yu Junfei's thoughts were the same as Cheng Hafeng's. He continued, "Miss Bailey, Cheng Hafeng is right. As long as you hand over the wind spirit tiger, we will pretend that nothing happened. What do you think?" Bailey Hongzhuang listened to Cheng Hafeng and Yu Junfei's words. She then looked at Fang Wensheng with a cold smile. The provocation and ridicule in her eyes were obvious. Fang Wensheng's expression turned ugly. He wanted to make things difficult for Cheng Hafeng and Yu Junfei, but he also understood that he was not qualified to do so. The cultivators in the city looked at the confrontation between the cultivators from the 4 dynasties, and their expressions became interesting. It seemed that this was a good show that could not be missed. Some of the teams that had formed an alliance with the Tiangang dynasty were watching from the side. They also wanted the wind spirit tiger, but after the cultivators from the 3 dynasties appeared, they no longer had any chance. Therefore, they could only watch the show. The cultivators from the 3 dynasties are all here. The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty have no way out. I'm afraid they can only give the wind spirit tiger away. If I were them, I wouldn't have come to the city. Isn't this courting death? In my opinion, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty must know that they can't escape the pursuit of the 3 dynasties, so they decided to call the wind spirit tiger out. Otherwise, being chased by the teams of the 3 great dynasties at all times isn't a good thing. Almost all the cultivators present suddenly felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were only doing this because they had compromised. In fact, there were many cultivators who chose to compromise in this assessment every day. Nothing was more important than one's life. Therefore, such a compromise would not attract the disdain of other cultivators. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's next words made all the cultivators freeze in place. "I'm really sorry, but we've already made a contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger. Even if we give them to you, they won't be of any use." Bailey Hongzhuang's elegant and charming face had an elegant and charming smile. Her eyes were apologetic and her voice was light and pleasant. However, this voice was not what the cultivators from the three dynasties wanted to hear. All the cultivators present looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. The possibility of this happening was close to zero. Chapter 1564. Damn, Bailey Hongzhuang, what kind of joke is this? How is it possible to form a contract with a demonic beast in this assessment? There's no ceiling master here. Even if you want to find a reason, you should find a more reliable one. No one will believe this kind of reason. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. The probability of this kind of thing happening was like a fantasy story. It was simply impossible. Chung Hifeng glanced at the surrounding cultivators, then looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "Lady Bailey, you've seen it yourself. No one will believe it." Compared to Chung Hifeng's faint smile, indifferent and warm appearance, Yu Junfei and Fong, when Cheng's faces had already darkened. From their point of view, Bailey Hongzhuang was making up a lie that was impossible to deceive them. Only a person with a good temper like Chung Hifeng would talk nicely with Bailey Hongzhuang. If it was them, they would have already made a move. Looking at Chung Hifeng's calm appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with admiration. It had to be said that this Chung Hifeng was truly an extraordinary person, just as bearing alone was not something an ordinary person could compare to. At least, Fong Wencheng and Yu Junfei could not compare to him in this aspect. Although a smiling tiger made people wary, it also made people admire him. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Her expression was somewhat regretful. "It's a pity that what I said was true." When these words came out, Chung Hifeng's brows could not help but furrow, but they quickly relaxed. "Lady Bailey, I've already said it. If you continue to evade, then there's no meaning." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "Chung Gongzi, I understand what you're saying. With your intelligence, I will not have the thought of deceiving you. Moreover, this kind of lie has no meaning. Could it be that Chung Gongzi thinks that I would make up such an inferior lie?" Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chung Hifeng's expression slightly changed. Previously, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was lying. But now, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't lying, because Bailey Hongzhuang was too calm and confident. Chung Hifeng narrowed his eyes. This was the second time he had come into contact with Bailey Hongzhuang. The last time he met Bailey Hongzhuang, he did not say much and did not know much about her. However, after today's exchange, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was quite a character. At the very least, her brain was much better than Fong Wenqing's. "If what Miss Bailey said is true, then do you mind showing it to us?" Chung Hifeng asked with a smile. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had said, there was no point in making up a lie about this kind of thing. As long as they checked, they would know the result. However, before Bailey Hongzhuang could say anything, Fong Wenqing's voice rang out. "What's the point of talking to her? As long as we kill them, won't this contracted beast be ours?" Fong Wenqing looked at Chung Hifeng in confusion. He only felt that Chung Hifeng's actions were completely unnecessary. Looking at Fong Wenqing's anxious appearance, Chung Hifeng could not help but frown. Cooperating with this kind of person would really damage his reputation. If Fong Wenqing's cultivation talent was not strong enough, this kind of idiot could only be cannon fodder. Chapter 1565. Chung Hifeng glanced at Fong Wenqing speechlessly, but he ignored Fong Wenqing's words. "Miss Bailey, as long as you can prove that you have really contracted with the Wind Spirit Tiger, then the cultivators of the Wu dynasty will leave directly and no longer participate in anything. How about it? If it wasn't for the Wind Spirit Tiger, he didn't want to be enemies with the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. He had a hunch that the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were not easy to deal with. Every dark horse had its own luck. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had come all the way here, and all their opponents had ended up in a bad situation. Once some people's luck came, no matter who they were, they would not have a good end. If the Wind Spirit Tiger really had no hope, then he didn't need to spend energy to be enemies with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Listening to Cheng Hifeng's words, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had some joy in their eyes. It seemed that the judgment of Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue was really not wrong. Cheng Hifeng's decision was the same as what they had guessed. Fang Wenqing looked at Cheng Hifeng puzzledly. He didn't understand why Cheng Hifeng was doing this. As long as they made a move, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty could only kowtow and beg for mercy. Why did they have to wait for Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to show off? Wasn't this a waste of time? Okay. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips evoked a faint smile. In the next moment, she waved her hand, and Xia Jiqing, Bai Junyu, and Yuan Xiaoman walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. The three people were holding their contract beasts in their hands. Since Cheng Hifeng wanted to witness it, they didn't mind letting him see it. The eyes of all the cultivators present were attracted. They wanted to know what the result would be. Although, in their opinion, this was simply an impossible thing, but Bailey Hongzhuang was so confident that they couldn't help but have some doubts. Cheng Hifeng stood in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. From beginning to end, he had been paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was always calm, and no one could find a trace of a problem. Looking at the Wind Spirit Tiger held by Xia Jiqing and the others, Cheng Hifeng took a closer look, and his face suddenly changed. A wisp of shock climbed onto his smiling face, and it was filled with dense disbelief and doubt. How was this possible? Cheng Hifeng only suspected that he had seen it wrong. However, no matter how he looked at it, the truth reminded him that he was not mistaken. Everything was real. After a long while, Cheng Hifeng recovered from his shock and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. At this moment, he finally understood why he had a bad premonition in his heart. It turned out that this was the reason. He had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would be able to complete the contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger before the end of the assessment. He suddenly realized why Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had been missing these days. They must have gone to contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger. Now that they had appeared in the city, it was because they knew that no one could take the Wind Spirit Tiger away. Fang Wenqing and Yu Junfei didn't care at all. Even if they used their toes to think, they knew that it was impossible. However, after seeing the sudden change in Cheng Hifeng's face, they were also a little surprised. Could it be that what Bailey Hongzhuang said was true? Chapter 1566. With this look, Fang Wenqing and Yu Junfei were dumbfounded. They must have seen wrongly, right? Fang Wenqing and Yu Junfei had the same thought in their minds. After taking a closer look, they saw each other's shocked eyes and were sure that they did not see wrongly. This was simply impossible. Fang Wenqing and Yu Junfei couldn't help but think this shouldn't be a trick deliberately used by the Tiangang dynasty, right? However, the fluctuation of the contract was very obvious, and it was not something that could be disguised. What kind of joke was this? The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had only disappeared for a few days, and they had already completed the contract. What kind of efficiency was this? The most important thing was, where did the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty find a sealing master? Sealing masters had always been a rare existence, and only young cultivators appeared in the assessment competition. It was impossible for a sealing master to appear. How did the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty do it? Just looking at the expressions of the captains of the three dynasties, the cultivators present guessed the real situation, and their hearts were also shocked. My God, it can't be true, right? Didn't you see that Cheng Hifeng and the others are silent? It must be true. Otherwise, they would not have such an expression. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty are really amazing. They can contract with monsters in this assessment competition. In addition to them, I really can't find such an example in the other dynasties. Just like how they had been in the small world for almost 2 years, they had been looking for monster cubs. However, even if they found a monster cub, they could not successfully contract it. On the contrary, it could be robbed by other cultivators along the way. Therefore, many cultivators could only give up this idea. Although the contract beast was important, their life was more important. They absolutely could not let the contract beast affect them. Fang Wencheng did not know what to say at this moment. The things that the Tiangang dynasty did really made people speechless. Young Master Cheng, you have seen it. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was still indifferent, and there was a trace of a smile. The eyes of Xia Jiqing and the others were filled with vigilance. If the other party wanted to make a move, they would be ready to make a move first. Cheng Hufeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement, then smiled and said, I believe you. You have good means. I will not participate in this matter. Thank you. Cheng Hufeng looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang and asked again, Miss Bailey, there is something this one does not understand and would like to ask for your guidance. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Young Master Cheng, please speak. May I know where you found a sealing master? Even someone as smart as Cheng Hufeng couldn't figure out how Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did it. Even if he obtained the Wind Spirit Tiger, he could not guarantee that he would be able to find a sealing master to help him seal it. As everyone knew, the price of hiring a sealing master to seal a demonic beast was not small. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty could do it so easily. They had sealed 3 demonic beasts in one go. Moreover, they had sealed all of them successfully. This was too shocking. Following Cheng Hifeng's words, Fang Wencheng, Yu Junfei, and the others looked at Bailey Hongzhuang curiously. They couldn't understand this result either. The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a bright arc, and her voice was light and pleasant to the ear. Chapter 1567. As soon as he said that, all the cultivators present were completely dumbfounded. All eyes were focused on Bailey Hongzhuang, and they were filled with disbelief. Bailey Hongzhuang is a sealing master? Is this possible? Are you sure you're not joking? Everyone was stupefied. How rare was a sealing master? Which sealing master didn't have countless cultivators seeking an audience with them? However, a sealing master was standing in front of them now. Moreover, it was a cultivator who was the same age as them, or even younger. For a moment, the atmosphere seemed to have frozen. Everyone opened their mouths wide, but they didn't know what to say. This kind of thing was even more unbelievable than the previous things. Cheng Hifeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang calmly. He saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were clear, and she didn't seem to be lying at all. I understand. Cheng Hifeng smiled faintly. He didn't doubt Bailey Hongzhuang's words. In fact, in this assessment competition, other than their team having a sealing master, there was almost no other possibility. No sealing master would spend so much effort to help someone contract 3 demonic beasts in such an environment. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had already created many miracles along the way. It didn't seem so unbelievable to create another miracle now. At least, this person was Bailey Hongzhuang. Compared to the cultivators of other dynasties, this person was more trustworthy. If Cheng Hifeng was still hesitating whether he should leave like this before, now he was incomparably certain of his thoughts. Such a young sealing master, her future could be said to be boundless. Until now, they still didn't know which dynasty the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were from. However, just from Bailey Hongzhuang's identity as a sealing master, he could determine that the power behind Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't small. Under such circumstances, not offending Bailey Hongzhuang was a very wise decision. I always do what I say. Cheng Hifeng still smiled. He waved his hand and said to the cultivators behind him, Let's go. The Martial Empire's cultivator did not hesitate after hearing Cheng Hifeng's words. There had never been any problems with the captain's decisions. When Fong Wensheng saw that Cheng Hufeng was about to leave, he couldn't help but ask, "Cheng Hufeng, you're leaving just like that?" Cheng Hifeng glanced at Fong Wensheng and said, "Now that things have come to this, what's the point of staying?" He wasn't a narrow-minded person like Fong Wensheng, and he didn't take the previous grudge to heart. In the next instant, Cheng Hufeng left. Seeing the martial empire's cultivator leave just like that, the crowd of cultivators present were all astonished. They hadn't expected the martial dynasty's cultivators to be so efficient, but they still had a good impression of them. Seeing Cheng Hifeng leave just like that, Fong Wensheng's expression became unsightly. He was filled with hatred towards the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. The wind spirit tiger was supposed to belong to them. Now that someone else had contracted it, he had completely lost all hope. However, he couldn't let this matter go just like that. This was intolerable. The Tiangang dynasty's cultivators were simply relying on the sealing master to trick them. If they left without paying attention to anything, wouldn't they be seen as a joke by other cultivators? Chapter 1568. Thinking of this, Fong Wensheng directly looked at Yu Junfei and said, "What do you plan to do?" Yu Junfei's mood was also very complicated. He never thought that something like this would happen. Now there were only two choices, either leave or fight. Yu Junfei looked at Fong Wensheng beside him. Their relationship had always been bad. If they joined forces to deal with the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty, wouldn't it be an even bigger joke? "We're leaving too." Yu Junfei waved his hand. Since the cultivators of the martial dynasty took the lead, then they did not need to care about the rumors. At least it was better than continuing to stay with people like Fong Wensheng. Soon, the cultivators of the Cloud Sword dynasty also left, leaving only the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty and the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty confronting each other. I didn't expect the cultivators of the Martial Dynasty and Cloud Sword Dynasty to leave just like that. Aren't the cultivators of the Tiangang Dynasty a little too lucky? If this happened to us, I think the cultivators of the three dynasties will definitely not let us go. Now that they actually left just like that, it's really strange. The cultivators of the Tiangang Dynasty have always been very lucky. They dared to swagger into the city because they have nothing to fear. For a moment, everyone only envied the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. Fong Wensheng could not help but ridicule after seeing Yu Junfei leave. They were all useless people. Even if he could not obtain the Wind Spirit Tiger, he would not let the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty off so easily. After seeing the cultivators of the two dynasties leave, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others shifted their gazes to Fong Wensheng. In the next moment, under everyone's astonished gazes, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others directly took out their weapons. This scene was completely within their calculations. As long as the cultivators of the two dynasties left, they would attack the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty. The strength of a large dynasty's team was indeed powerful, but it was not like they had never encountered them before. This Fong Wensheng had repeatedly caused trouble for them, and they also had a sense of anger in their hearts. Now it was time to personally deal with all of this. After seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The actions of the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were really not something that ordinary people could do. They actually dared to take the initiative to declare war on the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty. Fong Wensheng was also stunned. He did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others actually dared to provoke him first. It was really funny. "Ha! I really didn't expect you guys to be so bold." Fong Wensheng sneered. "You're unhappy, I want ahead." Mo Yunjue's voice was cold. He had long been itching to beat up this kind of noisy fellow. Fong Wensheng's words. Fong Wensheng's Fong. Fong Wensheng's Fong. He remembered that it was Mo Yunjue who had blocked his palm. Mo Yunjue's strength was also very strong. Kill the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand, and the lapis lazuli sword instantly appeared in her hand. She had already seen through Fong Wensheng's narrow-mindedness. Even if they did not declare war, Fang Wensheng would still cause trouble for them. It was better to be simple and directly attack. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi were already prepared. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's order, everyone directly charged towards the cultivators of the Azure Forest Dynasty. Chapter 1569. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest did not say much. The Azure Forest Dynasty's team originally had 12 cultivators, but one of them died when they were being chased by the demonic beasts. Now, there were only 11 cultivators left. The Tiangang Dynasty's team had a total of 8 cultivators. Including Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi, it was a one-on-one battle. As for the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers, they were still too young, so they could not participate in the battle. Mo Yunjue went up against Fang Wensheng, and Bailey Hongzhuang went up against another cultivator. Ever since their strength broke through, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest rarely had conflicts with cultivators from other dynasties. Now that they were going to fight again, not only were they not worried at all, but they were also very excited. As long as they dealt with the Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators, they believed that their points would skyrocket again. The assessment competition was about to end, and everyone was originally very worried about the problem of points. Now that the Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators were going to throw themselves at the muzzle of the gun, they naturally had to seize the opportunity. Not only Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, but Fang Wensheng and the rest also had the same thought. Now, they only hoped to get better and better points. Although as long as a cultivator was on the top 100 list, they could join the sect, but everyone knew that the higher their ranking, the higher their treatment and status in the sect would be. No matter when, the treatment of outstanding people was different from ordinary people. They're fighting just like that? The Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators are really not ordinary domineering. The Azure Forest Dynasty is a very famous large dynasty, and the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators dare to attack without saying anything. This kind of courage is really unparalleled. Who do you think will win and who lose in the end? Is there even a need to say? How powerful are the Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators? The Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators will definitely win this battle. I don't think so. The Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators are also very powerful. Everyone says that they're the dark horse of this assessment competition. The cultivators had different opinions. They just watched the 2 teams fight in full swing, and there were even people who bet on the outcome of this battle. After Fang Wensheng and Mo Yunjue exchanged blows, his expression changed. The previous collision in the forest was only a punch, so he did not have a deep feeling. Now that they had exchanged blows, he realized that Mo Yunjue's strength was really not ordinary. Not only was his strength not weaker than him, he might even be stronger than him. After understanding this point, Fang Wensheng's face became gloomy. He could understand why Mo Yunjue was so strong when he was just a cultivator from a small empire. At the same time, he noticed the battle between the other cultivators. Such terrifying combat strength would be considered extraordinary even in a large empire's team. Yet they were actually from a small empire? Or were they? However, the current situation did not allow Fang Wensheng to think about this at all. Mo Yunjue's attack had already arrived. Bailey Hongzhuang did not hold back when she attacked. There were so many cultivators watching here. If she did not settle it cleanly, it would undoubtedly cause more trouble. Chapter 1570. Captain, looks like this Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators are very powerful. A cultivator from the Martial Dynasty could not help but say. Cheng Hufeng looked at the scene in the distance indifferently and said, "Their strength is indeed very strong. Their background should not be simple either." He had already noticed earlier that not only Bailey Hongzhuang, but Mo Yunjue's strength was also very strong. However, Mo Yunjue clearly did not like to talk, so he had always remained silent. Even so, he was still able to determine that Mo Yunjue's strength was not simple from his posture and expression. This was because Mo Yunjue had always been standing in a defensive posture. Once someone launched a sneak attack, he would definitely attack with the fastest speed. Just this point alone was enough to prove that Mo Yunjue was an expert. He had never believed in the existence of luck in this world. There was only one reason why a small dynasty's team could come so far. Their strength was strong enough. The Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators seemed to have fallen into a disadvantage. A cultivator said in surprise. He had never thought that the Azure Forest dynasty's people would actually fall into a disadvantage. Chung Hufeng laughed lightly. With Fong Wenqing's character, he's destined to be unlucky. They'll definitely lose this round. Let's go. As his voice fell, Chung Hufeng no longer looked at the situation behind him and directly walked towards the next city. They had already stayed here for quite some time. It was time to leave. Hearing Chung Hufeng's words, the Martial Dynasty's cultivators were extremely impressed by Chung Hufeng. They had never thought that the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators would be so powerful to actually be able to defeat the Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators. Their captain's eyesight was still impressive. After Yu Junfei led the team of cultivators away, he stood not far away and sized up the Azure Forest Dynasty's movements. However, he did not think that the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators would make the first move. From the looks of it, it was not that Fong Wencheng did not want to let Bailey Hongzhuang and the others go, but that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not want to let Fong Wencheng go. After knowing this, Yu Junfei wasn't in a hurry to leave. He wanted to know where the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty got their courage from. Looking at the situation of this exchange of blows, Yu Junfei was dumbfounded too. Why did this Great Dipper dynasty's cultivators seem to be injected with stimulants when fighting? Fong Wencheng was clearly not Mo Yunjue's match from the way he was retreating. Not only Mo Yunjue, but the other cultivators of the Great Dipper dynasty were also very shocking. This was too shocking. If this continued, the decline of the Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators was only a matter of time. After all, with the Azure Forest dynasty's strength, even if they went against the Azure Forest dynasty, they might not be able to guarantee a 100% victory. The Great Dipper dynasty was merely a small dynasty, but its combat strength was actually so powerful. Most importantly, the combat strength of the three contracted beasts was also so strong. Wasn't this too abnormal? At this moment, Yu Junfei suddenly realized how wise his decision to leave was. Since he was unable to deal with the Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators all along, having the Great Dipper dynasty's cultivators to help them deal with this trouble was also a good thing. The Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators were completely annihilated. In this way, their dynasty could defeat the Azure Forest dynasty this time. How arrogant was Fong Wencheng normally? He would never have thought that he would have such a day. Chapter 1571. The cultivators in the city were dumbfounded. No one had expected the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty to be so powerful. Some of the cultivators who had the same idea of snatching the wind spirit tigers were glad that they did not make a move earlier. Otherwise, wouldn't they be looking for trouble? The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty are too powerful. Even the cultivators from the Azure Forest dynasty are no match for them. The combat power of the Tiangang dynasty is no longer in the category of a medium-sized dynasty. This is clearly a strength that only a large dynasty can have. The cultivators from the Wu dynasty and the Cloud Sword dynasty are really wise to leave so easily. I didn't understand before, but now I do. Among the three dynasties, the cultivators from the Azure Forest dynasty are the most annoying. There are countless cultivators who are unhappy with Fong Wencheng. Now that the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty have taken care of him, many cultivators are cheering in their hearts. The crowd watched the battle in front of them. There was no suspense about the outcome of the battle now. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' combat power was amazing. The three contract beasts were even more agile. They did not give the opponent any chance at all. Even the three wind spirit tigers were quietly watching the show at the side. The crowd was speechless at such a scene. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang knocked down the cultivator in front of her. Her long sword directly pierced into the opponent's body. Chi! The azure glaze sword was pulled out. It was crisp and clean. The azure glaze sword was like a work of art. It was not stained with the slightest bit of blood. Bailey Hongzhuang directly took the opponent's Qinquan bag and transferred the opponent's points to herself. Looking at the skyrocketing points, a hint of a smile appeared in her ink-black phoenix eyes. If her judgment was correct, she now had a lot of points. It would not be a problem for her to be on the top 100 list. After Bailey Hongzhuang took care of her opponent, she did not continue to attack. Instead, she waited on the other side, not far away. She believed that with everyone's strength, they could take care of their opponents. When the onlookers saw Bailey Hongzhuang standing on the side, their expressions couldn't help but change a bit. They knew that it was not because Bailey Hongzhuang did not want to help her opponents, but because she had absolute confidence in her teammates. This kind of confidence was something that not many cultivators in the entire assessment competition possessed. The golden sunlight shone on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Her white figure was even more graceful and moving. Her delicate face had a smile that could topple a city. It was shallow, but it made people think about it deeply. Bang! Mo Yunjue sent Fong Wenxing flying with a single palm strike. His handsome face was filled with indifference. Even though the sun was shining brightly, everyone still felt a trace of coldness when they saw Mo Yunjue, which made them feel surprised. Fong Wenxing's complexion became deathly pale. He had never thought that he would be defeated at the hands of a Great Dipper Dynasty cultivator. This black-clothed fellow in front of him was extremely powerful, and he was completely unable to determine Mo Yunjue's depth. From the beginning to the end, Mo Yunjue had not used his full strength when dealing with him. Every time he risked his life to increase his strength, he would realize that Mo Yunjue's strength had also increased. He was strong, but his opponent was stronger. This feeling almost caused him to break down. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.